Good morning, friends. This presentation brings you the important key differences between the Registration Act 1908 and the proposed Registration Bill 2025. How the Registration Act, which is almost over 100 years old, is going to be modernized with the digitalization process. This presentation briefly divided into 10 important points, starting from the introduction, then how the structured and administration changes happen, and what are the digital and technological advantages, what is the scope of a compulsory registration, and what are the procedural enhancements, how the dispute resolution is simplified, and how the refusal and appeal procedure is made easier. Then what are the fees and penalties, and what are the miscellaneous provisions, and what are the key innovations. So these are all the important with a conclusion session. Starting with the introduction. Now the Registration Act 1908, it has been a cornerstone of a document registration in India for over a century. Before Registration Act 1908, this is done during the British time, because the codification started in India through British rule in 1860. Before that, there were different local, provincial principles, depending on their individual rules and regulations. Various rules were there, and there is no codification. Once the codification started, the British started all the rules and regulations and everything, including the law and order, everything is codified. The Property Act, which is in 1982, which is established as a codification. The subsequent to that, the Registration Act and Stamp Duty Act also made mandatory. So with 1908 Registration Act, there are so many things they have been changed in the last 100 years. Although we have modified to suitable situations and incorporating some of the electronic things, but however, everything is not straight so far. So it was the time to revise all the British established codes, practices, law and order related issues with the modification of the Indianized, that is the Bharatiya, Nyaya Suriksha and other codes. This is one such a thing that draft registration bill is introduced in 2025. Now it is in a draft stage. Invitations for the comments is already there, and once draft is discussed in the parliament, then it is tabled in the parliament, then ultimately once it is approved, it becomes a registration bill, Registration Act 2025. The very purpose of this is to modernize the entire framework of the digitalized process and expanding the scope of a compulsory registration and streamlining various administrative procedures. Other things, structural and administration changes. We'd like to compare from 1908 to 2025. With respect to the hierarchy, earlier it was Inspector General, Registrar and Sub-Registrar. Now the various levels have been increased, starting with the additional Joint, Deputy and Assistant Inspector Generals, in addition to Registrars and Sub-Registrars. And appointments also, earlier it was only by the state government and the provinces. Now, since this act is applicable to throughout the country, the central government is also involved. So the various levels for the appointments and authorities have been clearly defined in section 4 and 5. Now earlier it was only the physical offices for registrar and sub-registrar. Now amalgamating the various offices, incorporating certain digital offices and remote access, the section 6 talks about the different type of offices for the registration processes. And with respect to the vacancy management, it was only via judges or a registrar in 1908. Now a systematic interim appointments, section 8 to 10, clearly defines when to appointment or when to clear the vacancy management. With respect to the scope and coverage, compulsory documents, optional registration, and authorities to adopt. With respect to the compulsory documents, earlier it was only any gift or a lease more than 1 year or a more than 100 rupees. Now this is totally obsolete. Hence they have added several other issues like any agreement to sell it has to be mandatory registered. Then the power of attorney for the transfer and sale certifications, including equitable mortgages, and also the company mergers. This may also include the certain court orders and decrees also with respect to the property related issues. And optional registrations, earlier it was only certain leases, receipts, and some movable properties. Now in addition to this, there are other provisions also introduced under section 13. And who are the authorities to adopt? Earlier it was only for the non-testamentary adoptions. Now it is retained and slightly modified to suit the present context. With respect to the other features like e-registration, it was not there in 1908. Now it is included, and it fully enabled online system for the submission and authentication of certificates and including the e-signatures. And identity verification earlier was only through physical appearance and some documentation. Now it is digital ID, Aadhaar based authentication, biometric, photo, digital records, as well as some of the modernized procedures. With respect to integration with other systems, it was not there earlier. Now interoperability is one important feature in the 2025 bill. With respect to the various other things like operability between the banking court systems enabled. With respect to the safeguards, earlier there was none, but now the safeguards includes the Aadhaar, IT Act and data privacy safeguards, so that both the fraud prevention and customer protection can be there. This included in section 29. Refusal to register. Earlier it was permitted but loosely structured. In the 2025 bill, it is well defined, structured and legally defined for the grounds for the refusal, so that anybody who is not happy with the refusal can approach legally. And cancellation was not defined in 1908. Now it is very clearly defined. It enabled the provisions for the cancellation with the due process and the natural justice. Time for presentation, 4 months was the earlier for execution. Whilst retaining the same thing, the provisions also included for an unavoidable delay, such as the citizen charters and overseas execution also. The effect of registration was from the date of the execution, and same thing is written in 2025 bill also. The 2025 bill made citizen-centric improvements. Language and accessibility. Earlier it was more of an archaic and a legalistic. Now plain language for drafting encouraged, including the simplified formats, so that the customers or the people who intend to register can approach directly without any middleman. They can directly use the formats and submit it. And private registration, earlier it was there and it was permitted for exceptional. Now the same thing is written, but it is extended for the accessibility for the needy under the section 27. Appeals and complaints, earlier it was only allowed through the judicial route. Now interdepartmental provisions were there, including the administrative redressals and the guidance for the redressal also. Institutional oversight and the governance. Oversight mechanism. Inspector General was the authority. in 1908 he or she was appointed by the state and generally oversight. Now the central and state levels they have recognized, and including the broader powers and controls of the sub-registrars. Earlier was under registrar only. Now the clear reporting control structure is defined under section 7. Rule making power, it was always a straight driven in 1908 Act. Now it has enhanced with the alignment with central digital laws, which includes the section 4, 5 and 6. Now compared to snapshot with respect to the key enhancement, key features are digital records which were not there earlier. It is interoperable electronic records. Online register is fully supported in 2025, which was absent earlier. Aadhaar integration is totally allowed with the safeguards, which was not there earlier. Institutional reforms were very, very minimal in 1908 Act. Now it has comprehensive hierarchy introduced so that there is no ambiguity. Similarly, citizen experience, earlier it was a complex and in person, now it is transparent, simplified and digitalized. Now, what are the implications for the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders? Here the stakeholders are citizens, legal practitioners, central state governments, real estate sectors and technology providers. With respect to the citizens, it has become very easy, faster and more transparent registration through digital means. Legal practitioner, clear provisions were introduced for the dispute prevention and dispute resolution, including the evidential values. State and central government, improved governance and policy implementation with the transparency is introduced. With respect to the real estate sector, increased compliancy, streamlined property transactions are introduced, particularly to avoid any fraud from the middleman or real estate sector itself. The registration is made very proper with respect to the any type of a property. And technological providers, the opportunity to build the interoperable and secure registration platforms are introduced, which may include to use of the cloud technology. Finally, there are certain miscellaneous provisions. In brief, this 2025 bill, it started with a digital enablement, expanded scope for the compulsory registration, special provisions for the wills including the withdrawals, procedural integrity, institutional reforms, easy accessibility, grievance redressal, more authentic, speedy and transparent, rationalizing the penalty system and cost-effective framework, and finally it is an overall digital ecosystem. Friends, with this we conclude this just with a statement saying that 2025 registration bill retains most of the important and core principles of the 1908 Act, but it introduces flexibility, digital tool and stronger safeguards to enhance the efficiency and reduce the fraud. And stakeholders should review the draft and ensure the smooth transition to the new system. It is the responsibility of all the stakeholders to go through this draft and review and send the comments to the government. Thank you very much. And to get more into details of this registration, please subscribe to our channel, and once the registration bill is finally tabled in the parliament, we'll have more discussions on this. Meanwhile, if you have any questions or doubts with respect to this one, please forward or put your statements in the comment box. Thank you very much.